So this video is a short walkthrough on how to write essays and understand the mark scheme for Cambridge IGCSE. So if you're not taking Cambridge, but you're doing another kind of IGCSE or GCSE, this is still really similar for you. So it's probably worth looking through this one. But especially if you're doing the Cambridge exam board, then this is going to really help you understand what you need to do to get good essays. So the first thing that you want to do is know your text really well. So you can't write a good essay if you know how to write an essay, but you don't know your subject or your text, if that makes sense. It sounds sort of logical, but sometimes people sort of try and run before they can walk, and they just try and jump into writing essays and then get annoyed at their grade or disappointed that it's not as good as they want it to be. So the first thing to fix and make sure is completely correct is your knowledge on the text. If you find yourself not really knowing what to say or feeling like your analysis is too simple, that's probably an error with your knowledge. So you want to go back to your text, learn it a bit more in depth, make sure you learn context and that kind of thing. If you feel like that's all good, then the next step is to get really used to essay writing, understand what those are and how to write them, and then also specifically understand the mark scheme for Cambridge. So the first section of this that goes through how to write essays is a general approach to any GCSE or IGCSE literature exam. The second bit is specific to Cambridge, but the other GCSEs and IGCSEs, because I teach all of them, they're all quite similar. They have similar types of mark schemes, so it'll still be useful for you. So yeah, let's kind of whiz through a little bit. This is just me talking at you, so feel free to go to scribbly.com and download this document from the course page. You can also buy it separately on PayHip as well, so we'll put a link there for how to do that. So basically, the main idea of this to start with is that I find, being a tutor and working with lots of students from different schools, that some good schools do teach students how to write essays, but the majority, unfortunately, don't. And so one of the problems that a lot of students have when they come to me, which is also the same problem I had when I was at school, is that they just expect you to write an essay without actually telling you what an essay is, which sounds strange, but weirdly, it's very common. So if you're here because you've never been taught how to write an essay, then I'm going to teach you now. It's something that you learn over time. You have to repeat it, refine it, learn it in multiple ways. It's a craft. So it's sort of like if you're learning to write a story or you're learning to paint a picture. It's not going to be perfect the first time you do it. You have to repeat a few times. So it's a skill. You build it up over time. We do have courses on essay writing and academic writing. The basic essay writing course on scribbly.com is completely free. I think I've got a plan to just always make that free because it does annoy me how little people get taught how to write essays. So just my gift to you guys is take that course. It will go into way more detail than this video will. But yeah, this video will give you a basic overview of what essays are, and then take the basic essay writing course on scribbly.com for free if you want more detail. So very important to write essays, especially if you go into higher education. A-level or IB requires you to write more advanced style essays. University, regardless of what subject you're doing, even if it's maths or science, you'll need to write really good essays. So the longer you leave it until you actually learn essays, the harder your life's going to get as you go through that academic trajectory. So yeah, make sure that you learn this ASAP. So the basic structure of an essay is this one: intro, middle paragraphs, conclusion. That's all you need. The rules for the intro are different from the middle paragraphs and different from the conclusion. So they're sort of like three separate things that you want to learn, kind of like the beginning, middle, and end of your essay. So we'll go through the rules of these now. So the intro is just about your opinion, your ideas on the question. Don't introduce the book or the text. I used to do this all the time where I just talk generally about the text. You don't need to do that. You just talk about your thoughts and opinions on the question. You give a little bit of a flavor of what the main essay will be about. You might look at different debates or different perspectives and angles. That's a more advanced thing. So if you're not comfortable doing that yet, I wouldn't worry about that. But in your mind, you should aim towards being able to look at perspectives and debates and that kind of thing. And then you present a thesis, which is also called an argument. This is really important, so it's worth spending lots of time getting confident with how to make and write a thesis. So your thesis is basically, if you're doing a GCSE or IGCSE essay, it's one sentence and it summarizes everything that you have to say on that particular question that you're given. So it's not just like you're writing a random essay on your poem or your text, you're actually writing a specific answer to that question. So you answer that question in a single sentence, but what you say has to be really sort of sophisticated and well thought out and well developed, so that you've kind of thought about it and refined it and narrowed it down. So the thesis statement is just one sentence, but it can really make or break an essay. And it's also the hardest thing to develop about your essay. That's one of the things that takes skill. Like I was saying, essay writing is a craft. So over time, you want to build up into being able to do good thesis statements. To start with, you can just try and write a simple answer to the question in one sentence, and that will give you a decent thesis. And then as you kind of get more confident, you can start to develop and refine your thesis so that it's more sophisticated. Yeah, so that's your intro basically. Usually if you're doing some kind of IGCSE or GCSE exam, I would recommend 2 to 3 sentences for the intro only, no more than that. Middle paragraphs. So again, for this exam, 3 middle paragraphs is fine. 2 is too little. I had a student once, I always warn everyone I know about this because it was really, really bad. And I felt so responsible for him because I had like a student who I'd taught for years, and he was on track to get an A star in his literature, Cambridge IGCSE, and he'd always done really good essays with me, but we'd not really practiced timing that much, which was my fault. And when it got to the real exam, he wrote his poetry essay with only 2 middle paragraphs, and he said, "Oh, that's okay, isn't it?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't think so." And he got a really low grade just for that particular essay. Luckily, we fixed the problem before he wrote the other essays for that exam, so he did fine overall. But I think he got an A in the end, or like a level 7, and he should have really got like a level 9. So it was kind of stressful for him. And then he got a 9 in his language as well. So he was a bit, it's still like an amazing grade, obviously, and it's still completely useful for the rest of his life. But yeah, do not write 2 middle paragraphs is the moral of that story. 3 minimum. You can do 4 if you're aiming for really high grades and you have more to say, or you want to explore a different perspective. If you're not confident with essays, though, definitely just stick to 3. Just do 3 middle paragraphs until you know what you're doing. You can structure them well. Once you can do that, then you can expand and do 4. So now we have a PEE structure in the middle paragraph, but to get a good grade, like a B or a level 6 and above, you have to go beyond just a basic PEE, because if you make a point, then you give one quote, then you analyze the quote. That is fine and it's correct for an essay, but it's not in depth enough or sophisticated enough to get you those high grades. So in order to do that, you need to do what you might have heard of as like petal paragraphs or pedal paragraphs. So point, evidence, technique, analysis, link. I like to add, even though it doesn't make a nice word, I add this thing called a development in there. So an alternative interpretation, extra evidence or context, that type of thing. So it makes the word petadle, which isn't really a word. It's not very easy to remember. But personally, that's how I structure my middle paragraphs, because I think that development really does make a difference if you're going to those high levels, even though it ruins the nice acronym there. So yeah, you make a point, you give evidence, you give technique, analysis, ideally a development, and then a link. And that's how you structure, almost sentence by sentence, how you're going to structure your middle paragraph. There's a lot more stuff on scribbly.com about how to do PE paragraphs and how to make them more sophisticated, especially in that basic essay writing course, also the academic writing course. So if you're not sure with this, you're not confident, go to scribbly.com. Take the basic essay writing course first, and then look at the academic writing course as well if you need a bit more help with that. Good. So that's your middle paragraphs, 3 of those. Ooh. Yeah. I'm not used to using my computer, evidently. So the conclusion, do not skip it, but also if you're rushed, it can just be one sentence. You need to summarize all of your strongest ideas. So you're basically showing off what you're proud of about your essay. You might offer some modifications as well, slightly change or develop what you said in the intro. So yeah, conclusion, don't worry too much about doing it perfectly. One sentence if you're rushed, but don't miss it out because you will drop marks. Good. So that's like a sort of overview of how to write an essay. And hopefully you feel quite, confident with that. You're feeling okay. It's just something that you learn over time. So if it feels overwhelming, just break it down, focus on intros until you can do a good one. Read loads of example essays. Again, there's a lot that I put on scribbly.com. I try and give as many examples as possible. That some of them are written by me, some are by students. So they're all kind of like different styles and levels. So you can have a look at the example essays, compare and contrast them to your own essays so that you can see where you're going right and where you're going wrong. So yeah, how is it marked? So examiners are people that mark IGCSEs and GCSEs. I'm actually, I've not done it for a couple of years now, but for a long time I was an AQA examiner for GCSE literature. So the way that an examiner works is they give you hundreds and hundreds of papers. You've got about 2 or 3 weeks to mark everything. You have to mark it as perfectly as possible. You get tested every 10 essays or so with like a secret kind of I don't even know how to explain it, like a dupe one that they've already marked. And you get tested to see that your mark is in alignment with that. So they're constantly testing you. Super high pressure, really don't get paid much for it. They sort of review you and shout at you all the time. So the only people that do it are quite mad people like me. And it's very stressful and it's not nice being an examiner. Mainly the real reason that people do it is it makes them a much better teacher or they get more experience. So most people that are examiners are actually really nice people because you don't do it for the money. You literally just do it to make yourself better at teaching and to understand, to kind of have the experience of marking hundreds of papers so you really know what you're looking for. So yeah, stressful job, make it easy for them. It's not just, people don't really think of the examiner when they're writing, they just sort of think of themselves, but you have an audience there. Your audience is the examiner. The examiner is usually a nice person that wants to give you marks. So all you have to do is really make it easy for them. Don't say things that are complicated. Don't make your structure kind of random. Definitely don't write, a sentence and then think of another random sentence and then think of another random sentence, because that makes it so hard for an examiner to follow your train of thought and to give you as many marks as you deserve. So instead, make the structure really clear. Make your essay with the examiner as your audience in mind. Learn the mark scheme, because all the examiner does is they apply the mark scheme to your essay. So if you can think like an examiner and you know your mark scheme and you know what they're looking for, you can just put all of that in your essay and then they'll mark it and then they'll find it. It's quite simple if you think of it that way. So you can see here what they're looking for. A1, detailed, so this is just specific to the Cambridge IGCSE, but the other mark schemes like AQA, EdXL, WJC, they're all quite similar. You need to show detailed knowledge of the content. So that's why I was saying at the beginning, you need to know your text really well. You need to understand the meaning. So the themes, the ideas, the messages, the attitudes. The Scribbly courses that I make on scribbly.com are actually all tailored towards making you understand that as much as possible. So you can take some of them in your specific text if needed. And they show you a deeper awareness of ideas and attitudes. If you can understand not just what happens, what is the literal thing that occurs, but why does it happen? What's the message? What's the point? How do we learn and grow by reading this piece of literature? If your brain and your essay is always focused on that, like what value do we get out of it, then your analysis is going to be a lot stronger and your AO2 is going to be a lot better as well. The context is also important, so don't forget the context. Refer to context at least twice in your essay. Yeah, and then also language structure and form. So this is really important. This is your poetic devices, your structural features. So if you're doing poetry, that might be stuff like metaphor, simile, alliteration, repetition, enjambment, that kind of thing. Structural devices in poetry are things like caesura. Actually, enjambment is structural. Caesura, enjambment, punctuation, stanza length, line length, rhyme, rhythm, meter, those kinds of things. The form of a poem is the type of poem it is. Is it a sonnet, an elegy, a villanelle, a free verse structure, that kind of thing? So you need to identify all of those techniques, but you also need to know why did they use them? What's the point? So there's no point saying, oh, this is alliteration, if you don't know why that alliteration is there, what effect it has. So the effects is the thing that you get the most marks for when you're doing language structure form. So you go into detail with precisely why did the writer use that in that particular moment. Finally, AO4 is your personal response. So that's how does your brain and your soul engage with that text? Does it make you think or feel differently about something? Does it help you to refine and develop your opinions on a particular theme or topic? So that should just come through as you're analysing and as you're writing your essay, but it's most present probably in your thesis as well. So you can kind of see here, if you want to sort of pause and look through the difference between a mid and a top band, and try to get that sort of stuck in your head, because that really does make the difference between an average level essay or a really good essay. And it takes a long time to build up your skill level. So people really, I don't think in 11 years of tutoring and teaching and being head of English for school and being an AQA examiner, I've ever seen anybody go from like a C grade to an A star grade in one go. Like if you want to get from a mid-level to a high level, you have to write an essay and then check it over and get feedback and then write another one and then write another one. And I have had students go from a D to an A star within 6 months before. But all they did was they applied that. They wrote tons of essays. They kept getting feedback. They kept trying. So if you want to go from that mid to top band, you really need a lot of practice writing this essay, build up your skills, get a tutor, take Scribbly courses, that kind of thing. Like get someone who'll give you precise feedback. Good. So yeah, this is just a small little lesson. Hopefully you're feeling a lot more confident with your essay writing now. Download this document from the scribbly.com page and have a look there for other stuff too. And take the basic essay writing course because it's free. So yeah, thank you very much, and I'll see you guys soon in a future lesson.